The tankathon continues. The Sixers fall 117 to 105. Let's break it down right here on Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On 76ers. We're your host, Keith Pompey, beat writer. I'm Kayla Santiago, sideline reporter for the Delaware Blue Coats, the NBA G League affiliate of the Philadelphia 76ers. If you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us wherever you listen to your podcasts, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. In addition, make sure you check out our free daily newsletter at lockedondaily.com. We'll be keeping up with the reverse standings in the NBA, see where the 76ers end up once it's all said and done in the draft lottery and so much more. But 117-105, Keith, exactly what we expected. They played well through three, seemed like they would compete a little bit, and then comes that daunting fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was. I mean, but you know what it is. That's what they want, right? I mean, when you have a roster and you play with a lot of fringe players, you know, this is something that's going to happen. I mean, you know, it's kind of like, remind me of the Los Angeles Lakers when they had Kobe, Bryant, and Shaq. They were like cat and mouse teams. Like teams would think like, we got a chance. We got a chance. Kobe only has 15. Oh, Shaq was out partying last night. And then all of a sudden, Kobe gets like 15 points in the fourth quarter. Shaquille O'Neal like just dominates everyone and they win. It's just one of those things because, you know, when you look at it, you know, you see a guy like you see a guy like Duncan Robinson. You know, He's a guy that comes off the bench. He hits a lot of threes. He does what he has to do. He had 21 points, but 12 of them came in the fourth quarter, right?
Yeah.
And here's the one thing I want to say this. You look at who the 76ers started, right? It started Lonnie Walker, Marcus Bagley, Adem Bona, Jared Butler, and Quinton Grimes. And Adem Bona was the only guy who was on the team prior to February the 4th, and he was the third string center. You know, Lonnie Walker is a guy who they got from Lithuania. Marcus Bagley is on his second 10-day deal. Jared Butler was a two-way guy who they traded for on February the 6th, and they turned him into they gave him a standard deal. And Quinton Grimes is a guy who they traded for from the Dallas Mavericks on February the 4th. So, you know, you look at it, and I have to say they're doing a phenomenal job of tanking. Phenomenal job.
That's exactly, though, what we want them to do. And it's so funny when we go back to the last few episodes and really before we kind of figure now that they're pretty secure in that fifth spot. They're only a game and a half behind the Pelicans, although looking at that Pelicans schedule, it doesn't look like they're going to win any games coming up. So the 76ers might stay there. But we said, we at least hope they do one thing right this season, and it's lose to try to get a better pick in the NBA draft coming up. They've been able to do that. Justin Edwards was out last night. In addition to that, Kyle Lowry was able to play. He only has 5 points. But, you know, I did like what I saw from Adem Bona. We talked about him before in the sense where it's like, okay, we haven't seen him against real competition. How will we be against that? But a double-double was getting a little bit fired up. You see Grimes talking back and forth in the third quarter, and then the fourth, Duncan Robinson says, all right, I'm going to play basketball, 12 of the 21, as you mentioned. So the 76ers just doing 76ers things. They're making it look somewhat competitive and fun through three quarters against a team like the Heat, and then they fall in the fourth. But for the Heat, this was actually a big game for them because you kind of look at Eastern Conference standings, and now they're only a half a game behind Chicago, which maybe gets them a home game in the play-in if they're able to get in that 9th spot. But nevertheless, Keith, I mean, the 76ers team, they're doing what they need to do, and I hope it gets Sixers fans just more excited for the draft coming up. Losing right now, but it might help them for the future.
All right, but I'm going to clarify one thing. I have no dog in this race. Yes, they are doing a phenomenal job of tanking. You have to commend them. The tear down is great. They played without 9 players again last night. But, you know, if I don't have a dog in the race in regards to, like, if I want them to tank, if I don't want them to tank, I'm just commending them on what they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, so, I mean, it's one of those things. But, you know, I mean, here's the thing. We have to, if you want to talk about something, The one person who really stood out to me last night was Lonnie Walker. And I talked about he had 29 points. He made 6 of 13 threes. Quinton Grimes took over the third quarter. Quinton Grimes had 29 points. He scored 15 of them in the third quarter. But I felt like early on in the game, it was all about Lonnie Walker. They would not have been there if it wasn't for him. And the one thing about Lonnie is, he's a guy, this is his 6th NBA season. He played for the Lakers. He was always known as a shooter, a scorer. He could get where he wanted to. And the thing that really impressed me is that, first off, when he found out that he was going to come back to the league and play for the Sixers, this guy basically is on vacation in France. He didn't go back to Lithuania. The clothes that he had with him, he said, forget that. I'm just coming to America, right? He didn't even go and go buy clothes or go to Reading because he's from Reading. He was sitting in the hotel. He was wearing team issue stuff. So then he has a concussion. Came back a little bit too soon, but he was eager to come back. Then he hurt his heel. And, I get it. He wants to be back in the league. But this is a season where it's easy to say, you know what? Everyone's hurt. Let's just shut down and leave this thing alone. So for me, you know what? I know that they've been playing a lot of undermanned teams, but you got to give this guy credit, shooting 10 for 18, 6 for 13 on 3. He had he only had 1 rebound. He had 2 assists. But to me, this was a really good game to bring his stock up and for the 76ers to say, no, Lonnie, you're not going anywhere. You're coming back with us next season.
Do you think that's a reality for Lonnie Walker? Because it's really awesome to see the situation that he was in and being able to be in the league with the Sixers. And yeah, it's an undermanned team. Granted, they're not competing for anything at this point, but he's still able to play in NBA games and show what he's doing out there. Do you see a world where the 76ers bring him back with this kind of interview portion that he's in right now coming to an end this season?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? They have his rights. I think that they would be foolish if they didn't bring him back, right? I mean, right now, he signed a 2-year deal worth $3.7 million, right? He got $780 this year just because it was all prorated. So which means is what he's going to make this season, next season, if he comes back. Now they have a club option on him that the deadline for them to pick that up is on June the 29th. But his club option is $2.9 million. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. The way that this guy has played, the way that he looked, he's worth more than $2.9 million. So, yes, he's definitely coming back in my eyes. I shouldn't even just say my eyes. They would be foolish to let this guy walk, because he can be a spark off the bench. He plays with that grit. He does a lot of other things that they like. And, I'm pretty sure they'll probably wait up until the 29th or whatever to make it official. But at the same time, you can't let this guy walk out the door. You just can't.
And it's so important for the 76ers organization to look at this period right now with these players and say, okay, who's going to fit in well? Who's going to be that spark off the bench, as you mentioned, too, with the current team that you have? Because when you look into next year and you say, okay, fingers crossed, right, that everything works out for the Philadelphia 76ers. Finger crossed for them is what I mean. That Joel Embiid comes back fully healthy. We'll see what they do with Paul George, that Jaren McCain plays like he did last year at a high level. Whoever you draft adds in to the fun. Bringing guys off the bench that you can trust, that can play, that will come out there and give you a little something is going to be huge for the 76ers team, because you didn't see it early in the season, really, this year when you had Joel Embiid and Paul George and Tyrese Maxey all trying to go out there and gain that chemistry. But it could be big for them to have somebody that they can go to coming off the bench, or even a few pieces. We talked about Justin Edwards as well, throughout this season as well, to be able to have next year when you have all your stars aligned. Again, we're talking if it all works out, to be able to just have that push, because we've seen success from that in other teams. The 76ers haven't had too much of it, but now you're seeing guys that maybe could fit in there when we look at next year.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, because it's kind of like early in the season, Jared McCain did look good coming off the bench, but then he got inserted into the starting lineup.
Exactly.
You know, Ricky Council and them looked good for a little bit, and so did KJ, but then they got hurt, so it wasn't just for an extended period of time. But with him he's a bona fide NBA player. Like, you know, where you look at Jared McCain, he was a rookie, taking people by surprise. This guy has a role where he can just be another wing guard who can just come off the bench and just get you buckets. You know what I mean? So that's the good thing about him. He can just get you buckets.
That he can, and they need that off the bench, especially if this team can come back and be in full swing a season from now. 36ers lose their 12 straight, 117-105. We'll talk a little bit about coming up what Nick Nurse had to say in addition to Quinton Grimes, and kind of just break down where the 76ers are. There's 3 games left on this season, so we'll continue to break it down right here on Locked On 76ers. And with Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%, plus you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold to receive 3% boost on annual IRA contributions. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from the first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account. Interest the rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Once again, make sure you go check out Robinhood Gold today. All right, so Nick Nurse has had a lot to say, a little to say. We've seen him cover up a lot of things for some players. We've seen him go out there and just say that he wants to give these guys an opportunity to play, go out there and compete. Keith, how's Nick Nurse feeling right now at this point? There's 3 games left on the season. You know, you're getting ready to look ahead, see where you end up falling in the draft. This is definitely a point where Nick Nurse is still saying, okay, this is time for these guys to get interviewed. But what else is he having to offer here as the season is coming to an end?
You know, I mean, it's the thing is, it's all about getting guys minutes, right? So they can showcase, right, what they're doing. But here's the thing. At some point, right, the Sixers are going to have to start thinking about next season. But the problem is they still don't know who they're going to have on the roster or what the future is going to look like. So before the game, you know, Nick Nurse was asked, how does he unpack all of that and deal with the uncertainty? And this is what Nick said. He said some things. He said, well, I think the biggest thing is obviously going to be on the health of these guys and how quickly we get them back on the floor, working at their games, right? So he starts something, but he's asking a question, what Nick does at times. But then he comes out and he says, there's obviously a good number of them that need to be taken care of, get back to health. But obviously, Joel and Paul will be the big concerns. Can they get back and get ready to go? And I guess we won't find that out for a little while. And then you start unpacking, and then you get back to thinking there's some really, really good players there, and start piecing it together. And then we get ready to build out the rest of the roster around them. So, you know, right now, while the focus is we're talking about, okay, they want to win games. They want to not really win games. They want to lose games, but they want to develop players. But the elephant in the room is, what's Joel going to be like next year? What is PG going to be like next year? You know, it's easy to say, yeah, they're going to have these procedures, and after these procedures. Paul George is going to go back to being an all-star. Joel's going to go back to playing at an MVP level. We don't know. We just don't know. So there's a lot of uncertainty going on, and these are something that's, Nick Nurse is starting to think about.
Keith, let me ask you this, and I'm really curious from your response here, because the beginning of this year, we both talked about this on several episodes, that it was a really risk versus reward situation, because the team that was built on a lot of some older guys, some vets that were kind of backing up these guys. And if Joel Embiid and Paul George go down, well, who really is your team? And we saw that develop throughout this season. Do you think the risk versus reward was more to look at in 2025, 2024, 2025? Or do you think it's going to be worse going into this year coming up? Because now, once again, you are saying if Joel Embiid is dominant and fully healthy, if Paul George is all-star level PG, these guys have played together and we really haven't seen them play well together, but we're still putting a lot on trying to get the reward of these guys being able to play. But if it doesn't work out, we are back to square one. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the problem is it's going to be different from last year, but the problem is when you have so much money invested in those two players,
right?
Yeah, they got to be a vital part. If not, it's a failure. But the one thing that I will say is that, we talked about Lonnie Walker, right? Mm-hmm. We talk about Quinton Grimes. So basically, Lonnie Walker and Quinton Grimes are a younger version of Eric Gordon and Reggie Jackson and like Kyle Lowry, right? Although two of them were point guards and one's Quentin is a combo and Lonnie is a two guard, but Eric Gordon was a two guard. Now, the thing is, Eric Gordon does have another year left on his contract, right, so he can opt in. But again, I do think that with them getting younger, and let's say if they do get that draft pick, that could help them out tremendously from the standpoint of you'll have another, if you keep the pick, you'll have another young star that you can help build around. And that will enable you to like separate yourself from the guys who are like maybe Paul George or someone, right? Like Now again, you're going to be cash strapped, but at the same time, you have a star player that you can. So yeah, it's bad that they have these two guys who are going to be their focal point. But at the same time, when you look at the roster around them, you have to say that Quinton Grimes is an upgrade. You have to say that Lonnie Walker coming off the bench will be an upgrade, And, heck, the way I'm looking at it, Jalen Hood Schifino, like he's a pretty good player as well, right? Give you energy. So those are three guys that I really like and guys I think the 76ers should keep on the roster.
When I look at the positive of it, too, for the Philadelphia 76ers, going into next season, as Nick alluded to, you are waiting to see, it's a wait-and-see game with the health of Paul George and Joel Embiid and to see how they come back, if they're even going to be able to play together and be dominant. But you do kind of have the backup of, if guys can stay healthy, of the duo of Maxey and Jared McCain. And if they get that draft pick, whoever they bring in, and just some younger guys that you have that you really fell through with a season ago that really, really, really ended up hurting the Philadelphia 76ers. So I think there is some positivity, even if Joel Embiid and Paul George don't come back as the team wants them to or the organization wants them to. At the same time, they're not going to get too far without those two guys being dominant, but there is more positivity behind that for the future and the youth and everything in between of how these guys can kind of play together. So it's interesting. Of course, Coach Nurse just kind of talking how everybody is saying it just depends. We don't know what's going to happen at this point because you need Joel Embiid and Paul George to come back and be healthy. So that's what they're looking forward to next year, and just a chance for these other guys to kind of compete their interview session to see who they're going to bring back, to see if they can get other looks in the NBA at this point of the season for the Philadelphia 76ers. But Quinton Grimes also had some to say after the game, so we'll break that down on what just he's been able to do this season ever since the 76ers got him. So we'll discuss that and more on the other side right here on Locked On 76ers. And this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. But traditional in-person therapy can be expensive, often ranging from $100 to $250 a person per session. That's where BetterHelp comes in. With online therapy, you can get quality care at a price that makes sense, saving you time and money. Therapy isn't just for life's toughest moments. If you're having a bad week, or if you're overwhelmed with work, or if it's just little things that you feel like are not allowing you to get through your day the way you wanted to, you can have a mental health check-in with BetterHelp. Or if something drastic does happen, of course, you can head over to BetterHelp. They are able to help you with anything that you need at any point in terms of if it's your day-to-day life or something that happened in your life and everything in between. It can help with everyday stress, learning how to set boundaries, or developing positive coping skills. Having access to support when you need it can make a huge difference. Your well-being is worth it. If you're super busy and if you feel like you can't go in person or want to save some money because it can be expensive if you go in person, BetterHelp is a fantastic way to be able to do that in the comfort of your home. You can even do it on your lunch break if you need to, and it's very quick and easy. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure you go check it out today. So Quinton Grimes, another big night, 29 points in addition to 8 rebounds and 6 assists, adding 1 steal to that as well. Keith, what did he have to say after the game? Because he has been such a bright spot for the Philadelphia 76ers. I know Philly fans are already loving the guy. They want him back next year. What were some of his thoughts after the contest last night?
It's weird. He's been extremely positive, right? Extremely positive, to the point where, when he talks about it, it's kind of sort of like, he broke it down. I mean, he basically said, you know what, I feel good about how we played. I really do. I mean, he said it came down to, we were in the game, and then it says every game it comes down to like the last 4 or 5 minutes, right? And that's when the other team goes on a run. He says that's when like the depth kind of comes into play with other teams. The experience comes into play with other teams. He said we got 2 guys on 10-day contracts right now. We're trying to get them acclimated with what we do. It's tough, but we are fighting every game. No game has been easy with the teams that we are playing. So I feel like that's a good thing to hang our hats on for sure, knowing that we're not getting blown out. And I have to say that, there have been a couple games that they did get boat raced, right? I mean, It was ugly, right? But for the most part, it's kind of like they've been going places and they've been playing extremely well. Now, if we're going to be real, Bam didn't play, a couple other people didn't play, but Tyler Hero played. He was an all-star. Duncan Robin played, so, so the Miami Heat did have a split roster, but they had some quality players. So with that being said, I understand where he's coming from, though, because I do think that they are playing well. It's just that the way the roster is not built for them to win games, because in the NBA, guys wake up in the fourth quarter, they play 82 games, so they don't go hard like they do in college from the start. The fourth quarter is when guys kick it into extra gear, overdrive, and that's when the 76ers just can't compete, because the 76ers players are going hard from the beginning to the end because they're just not as talented as the players they're playing against.
Yeah, and I know they kind of need to, too, if you want to keep it competitive, to be able to go hard throughout at least 3 quarters, and then it kind of falters in the end. But I really like that from Quinton Grimes, because when you look at it, you look at this roster, and we've been talking about it so much, just a lot of G League guys, some guys coming in on 10-day contracts, Bagley, Bona, Butler, Grimes, Walker getting the start. Then you have Brees coming off the bench, Castleton, Brissett as well, in addition to Lowry, Hood, Schifino, too. So when you look at that, and Ricky Council, what Grimes is basically saying there is, listen, we have a team that is kind of a bunch of guys that all just had to come and group together and go out there and play NBA basketball games that probably would not have even gotten that opportunity if this team was healthy, if this team was ready to go. And I think, I don't want to say it's a resilient group because I don't think that's the right word, but I do think it's a group that goes out there and competes because they know it's on the line for them personally. They know that this could be a job for them next year if they're able to play well or if they're not able to play well as well. You see Bagley coming up on that 10-day, and that's huge for him. Somebody who played decent on the Blue Coats, but went out there, played hard every game. Coach Longobardi really liked how he played, the head coach of the Delaware Blue Coats, that he gets an opportunity with the Philadelphia 76ers. So yes, it's not a team that people are going to get excited for the playoff push or anything like that, but it's a group that has to go out there and compete and at least making it exciting through half of these games or through half of the game from that standpoint. And Quinton Grimes kind of showing that. So I love the positivity from him. And Keith, I've said this before, but he is somebody that I'm really, really hoping that the 76ers are able to work something out and keep him as well. Because remember, the Mavs, what we heard is that they knew they were going to have to pay him a little bit more than they wanted to, but Grimes is kind of working that stock up a little bit because he has really, really been a big bright spot, and his positivity even adds to that.
Yeah, and you know what? You're right. He is a guy that, that I feel like the Sixers would benefit from coming back a lot. But here's the thing that gets me. So when we talk about who started tonight, Marcus Bagley got the start over Ricky Council IV, right?
Yeah.
So now I know, like, you can say Ricky is a 3-4. He can play a little bit of 2. But Marcus got the start. And when you look at it, Marcus didn't really have a particularly great shooting night. He had 6 points. He went 2 for 8 shooting. He missed both of his threes. He had 4 rebounds. He had 6 rebounds. 2 of them were offensive. He had a block. He had a steal, right? He had 1 turnover, and he was a -2 in 23 minutes, 26 seconds. Now let's go look at what Ricky Council did, who played when he came out of the game. So Ricky Council had 5 points on 1 for 6 shooting. He was 0 for 2 for 3, right? He had 5 rebounds. He had 3 of those rebounds were offensive. He had 2 assists. He had 3 turnovers, and he was a -9 in 19 minutes, 26 seconds. To me, this is a concern that, the guy, he's not separating himself from Bagley. And I know, like, they played with each other last year on the Blue Coats and when he went down there this year. But the fact that Bagley is getting the start is telling me that the 76ers want to get an extended look at him to see what he can do. And the one thing is, yes, they're both not shooting, but and he did have talking about Ricky, he did have 3 offensive boards, but Bagley is doing more things on a defensive end, right? And to me, that's a little bit of a concern moving forward. If I'm a player, I'm wondering, what are the coaches thinking?
Yeah, and, it's so interesting because we've talked about this a few weeks ago and throughout the weeks too, that we think that Ricky's thinking too much, right? He goes up sometimes out of control. He doesn't have that same kind of spark that he used to. And when you talk about the mental side and the mental game of basketball, you look at it now and you say, okay, my former teammate on the Delaware Blue Coats that just got bumped up to this 10-day is now playing over me in the starting lineup with 3 games left to go. And I haven't really been able to produce much through this kind of interview session that we've been talking about. I think if you're Ricky Council, that has to be tough from his standpoint. There's 3 games left and you're having guys start over you. And one of them is Marcus Bagley. He just hasn't performed, I think, the way the 76ers want him to, or that we thought he would, especially because he performed so well coming off the bench with the 76ers team that had more guys. And now with guys kind of at the same level as him that are getting the same opportunity as him, he's kind of being left behind a little bit. So these next 3 games, and I've been saying this throughout the rest of the season, I'm really going to be looking at Ricky Council to see if he can push it a little bit or see where the 76ers kind of put him in terms of if it's the starting lineup, where he's at in rotation and things like that, because that's a tough spot for Ricky Council to be in. And 76ers are taking a look at other guys right now to see who maybe they want to keep, who they want to add to their team a year from now too. Well, the 76ers, they fall 117 to 105. Now, a game, everybody, that we want to look at that's actually really interesting is the only losable game for the Pelicans, to me, is possibly against the Nets. That game is today at 7:30 p.m. The 76ers are a game and a half behind fourth place is where the Pelicans are right now. And they play the Nets at 7:30. So that's a game that we'll be tuning into to see if the 76ers can gain some ground there. They're good in fifth spot for now, as the Brooklyn Nets right now are a few games above them in that sixth spot. So we'll wait and see. But after that, the Pelicans, they have a pretty tough schedule where it doesn't look like any wins will happen. The Bucks, the Heat, and they finished their season with the Thunder. So that'll definitely be a tough few games for them to round out the year. But the 76ers, they lose their 12 straight. They're doing what they need to do, and they are continuing the tank. They're where they need to be, and they await to see where they'll be in the lottery with 3 games left to go on this season. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers. For Keith Pompey, I'm Kayla Santiago. Make sure you check out our free daily newsletter. That's on LockedOnDaily.com, and we'll see you guys next time.